All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Well, folks, the month of October is nearly in the books. And with that said, we're getting closer and closer to finding out who are going to be the 12 teams that are going to make the inaugural 12 team college football playoff. And of course, there are some very important games on tap for the month of November. And at the end of the day, I think November is going to be like the rest of this college football season so far. Plain and simply, expect the unexpected. I think, we could see some upsets in November as far as derailing the chances of some teams that feel like they can make the playoff. But nonetheless, with about a little bit more than 2 months in the books in this college football season, who do I feel would be the top 12 teams to make the playoff if the playoff were here today? Number one, I'm going to go with the Oregon Ducks. Okay. You look at the Ducks, their first year in the Big Ten has been a smooth transition. And I really like the Ducks' chances to get to the playoff, regardless if they win the Big Ten or not. Number two, I'm going to go with Georgia. Georgia, under head coach Kirby Smart, continues to be a powerhouse. We saw them dominate Clemson to begin this season. They lost at Alabama, and then we just saw how they came back 2 Saturdays ago and dominated Texas in Austin. Number three, I'm going to go with Miami. And you look at the Hurricanes, and things are coming together this year in a very big way for Miami under head coach Mario Cristobal. You look at BYU, the Cougars this year in the Big 12, they're undefeated so far. And looking at the Cougars' schedule, the remaining schedule, they do have a good opportunity to run that table. Now, at number five, I'm going to go with Penn State. And the Nittany Lions, of course, they're undefeated right now. It's been a workmanlike approach for James Franklin's squad. They continue to be like that. Their biggest issue over the last couple of years, they've had 5 losses over the last 2+ seasons. 4 of them have come to Michigan and Ohio State. Let's see if that changes this year. Number six, right behind Penn State, I'm going to go with Ohio State. The Buckeyes are right there, continue to be one of the top teams in the Big Ten. The only blemish on Ohio State's record so far this season is their narrow loss on the road in Eugene to Oregon a couple of weeks ago. And then, of course, a big one this Saturday where you're going to have Penn State and Ohio State facing off. Number seven, I'm going to go with Texas. And, for a while, Texas was rolling until they ran into the buzzsaw that was Georgia. And it wasn't just the fact that Texas ran into Georgia. Georgia came through Austin and dominated the Longhorns. They escaped Vanderbilt with a win this past Saturday. But guess what? That wasn't the case for Alabama a couple of weeks ago. As you could see, this Vanderbilt team is real. But nonetheless, so far, so good in year one in the Southeastern Conference for Steve Sarkisian and the Horns. Number eight, I'm going to go with the Tennessee Volunteers. Josh Heupel's squad, for the most part, they've been up and down, but they only have one loss on their resume so far, a tough one at Arkansas. And I still think Tennessee is in that mix to get to the playoff. Number nine, I'm going to go with Clemson. And, after Clemson's first game of the season where they got destroyed by Georgia and Atlanta, everybody was ready to, jump off the Clemson bandwagon, talking about Dabo not hitting the transfer portal. The game has passed him by, you name it. But the bottom line is Clemson has quietly gone out there and taken care of their business. And you look at the Tigers, they have a very good opportunity to finish the season with just one loss and get to the ACC championship game and possibly face Miami. Number 10, I'm going to go with Iowa State. And for Matt Campbell, his squad is undefeated. They've navigated through the wild and wacky Big 12, and they have an opportunity to run the table and possibly face a BYU in Arlington in the conference championship game. Number 11, I'm going to go with the darlings of this college football season. I'm going to go with Indiana. I know some people are going to say, well, they should be ranked a little bit higher. Well, I guess tell you what, I got Indiana in my top 12. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you ranked. you just get in. Kirk Signetti has done a tremendous job. We saw him do it before. James Madison. Now he's working his magic once again in Bloomington. And let's just see how far this thing is going to go for the Hoosiers. And number 12, I'm going to go with Boise State. And I think Boise State really just solidified themselves as the top Power Five team through the first couple of months of this season. We saw them go to Vegas, beat UNLV. Like I said, there's a very good possibility that we see Boise State and UNLV meet in December in the Mountain West Championship game. And that game could be a de facto playing game. But nonetheless, I'm going to go with the Broncos rounding out this field of 12. I got a couple of teams to keep an eye on that are right on the cusp. I look at Notre Dame, and Notre Dame has looked like a very different team since the Northern Illinois loss. It's one of those where, of course, the Irish have to run the table and they have to do it in dominating fashion if they're going to get to the postseason because they have no conference championship game. But nonetheless, Notre Dame still has Army on the schedule. You know they're going to beat the brakes off of Florida State at this point, and then going out to LA to finish the season against USC. Right behind Notre Dame, I'm going to go Texas A&M, and of course, some people might ask, well, A&M's ranked number 10 right now. Why don't you have them higher than Notre Dame? I know Notre Dame is 8, but again, Notre Dame did go to College Station and beat the Aggies to begin this college football season. Big win this past Saturday for A&M as they knocked off LSU at home and possibly derail the Tigers' playoff chances altogether. Number 3, I'm going to go with Pitt. You look at those Pitt Panthers; they're undefeated coming out of the Atlantic Coast Conference, and it's going to be very interesting to see if Pitt can get to the ACC championship game once again under head coach Pat Narduzzi. So, of course, some games to keep an eye on for this coming weekend with college football playoff implications. It doesn't get any bigger than Ohio State and Penn State, two perennial powers in the Big Ten Conference. On top of that, two teams that are currently ranked in the top 5, and there's only one loss between the Buckeyes and the Nittany Lions. We've got Duke traveling to take on Miami. And you look at Miami so far, pardon me, Duke rather, so far under head coach Manny Diaz. Remember, once upon a time, Manny Diaz was the head coach at Miami. Manny Diaz was let go. And it's going to be interesting to see if Diaz and his Blue Devils have any tricks up their sleeve when they take on the Canes this weekend. Number 1, Oregon traveling to the big house to take on Michigan. I know in years past, we saw Oregon go to Ann Arbor and dominate Michigan. A lot has changed for both these programs since, but this is Oregon's first trip there as members of the Big Ten Conference. I know that Michigan is down this year as they're looking to retool after they won the whole thing last year, but you can never count them out. And then finally, a big game that I feel is a big game that's not getting a lot of national pub. That's Pitt taking on SMU. Pitt is ranked 18th right now. SMU is right there at number 20. And you look at the Mustangs, a solid transition for them to the Atlantic Coast Conference. They're 7-1, big time comeback win over Duke this past Saturday night. And I'll tell you like this could be a de facto play out game for the loser, if you will. But nonetheless, I think it's still going to be a tremendous contest for both of these clubs get together. So it's not just the race for the college football playoff, it's also the race to get to your conference championship game as well, because it's one of those where clearly everybody's not going to win their conference and get to the college football playoff, but still you want to be upon those upper echelon teams in your respective leagues. Right now in the ACC, we still got 4 teams that are undefeated within conference play, and 2 of those teams are undefeated overall in Miami and Pitt. And the other 2 teams that are undefeated, they both have 1 loss. I'm talking about SMU, who barely lost to BYU, and Clemson, of course, who took it on the chin courtesy of Georgia. Then you look at the Big 12, the 2 teams that are undefeated still in that league are the 2 teams that are still undefeated overall. And I'm talking about BYU and Iowa State. But you got Colorado and K-State right there with 1 conference loss each. Can they both find a way to make an impact? And again, K-State's only loss came at the hands of BYU. You look at the Big Ten right now, you got 3 teams that are undefeated in the league and still undefeated overall: Indiana, Oregon, and Penn State. And then Ohio State is the only one-loss team within the Big Ten. Everybody else within the Big Ten has at least two conference losses. Then you look at the Southeastern Conference, and of course, some people are going to say, is it more SEC bias? Why? Because the SEC currently has 8 teams that are ranked in the top 25. Clearly, all of them are not going to get to the postseason, to the college football playoff, that is. But nonetheless, Texas A&M is the only team within the SEC that is still undefeated because all of these teams are beating up on each other. And you see a common trend here for the most part. Most of these teams have taken losses on the road. Georgia lost at Alabama. Tennessee lost at Arkansas. LSU lost to Texas A&M. Alabama lost both at Tennessee and Vanderbilt. So you kind of see a theme right here. But nonetheless, you look at what A&M is doing so far under head coach Mike Elko. Georgia is lurking. Texas, I want to see, they got the win. They escaped Nashville with the win over Vanderbilt, but I feel like Texas still has the ability to take things to another level. But nonetheless, you look at things and the way it's rounding out. Um, the teams that I feel like have the best chance to get to the college football playoff, I feel like that loss to Alabama, and not just the loss to Alabama, getting down big in the first half was a wake up call for Georgia. And things have changed and they look drastically different going forward. Oregon, they're the top ranked team right now. And I think I really like Oregon's chances to get to to the Big Ten championship game, and B, I like them to get there undefeated. And for the sake of argument, let's say Oregon gets to that Big Ten championship game, and let's say they have the rematch with Ohio State. Let's say Ohio State wins this time around. I still think Oregon is a playoff team. It would just be a matter of that game would basically be deciding who gets a first round bye for the playoff. Penn State, I like their chances as well, regardless if they win or lose against Ohio State this Saturday. Remember, James Franklin does not have a great track record against top 10 teams, but nonetheless, I still think the Nittany Lions have what it takes to have at least 11 wins at regular season's end. BYU and Ohio and Iowa State out of the Big 12. I like both of their chances. Iowa State more or less BYU. I still think both of these clubs have favorable schedules coming down the stretch to get to their respective to the Big 12 conference championship game. But nonetheless, one thing we've known for sure so far this season, expect the unexpected. And then finally, I like Notre Dame's chances to get to the college football playoff. Why? Because I think everything is set up for Notre Dame to run the table for the rest of the season. They have a favorable schedule. They got the wake up call against Northern Illinois. And then on top of that, they don't have to worry about a conference championship game. And we're going to see these other teams beat each other up there. Some other games that are coming down the pike real soon that are going to have a big time impact on the college football playoff picture. You look at LSU and Alabama taking on each other in the month of November. LSU's at 6-2. Alabama's at 6-2. Alabama has two conference losses. LSU one. That basically could be a de facto play out game for the college football playoff. You still got Tennessee taking on Georgia. You still have Georgia meeting Ole Miss, and Ole Miss has two losses within the SEC. That could be a play out game for them as well. But right now, there's a lot going on in the sports world. Today's the equinox, okay? But nonetheless, college football is still one of the best things going in sports. And again, like I said before, simply expect the unexpected this season. But nonetheless, we've gotten through August, we've gotten through September, and now we're about to bid farewell to October. It's stretch run time, folks, in college football. That race for the playoff, of course, there's going to be a bevy of rivalry games in the month of November. And with those rivalry games, you simply throw the rule book out the window. And speaking of rivalry games, we're finally going to get it for the first time in a long time this year. Texas and Texas A&M. It's going to mean something because again, the Longhorns and Aggies are once again in the same conference. But then we're also talking about potentially a top 10 matchup between Texas and Texas A&M. It's been a long time since that's been the case, and also possibly a trip to Atlanta for the Southeastern Conference Championship game could be on the stake, could be at stake when these two longtime bitter rivals who have not faced each other on the gridiron in quite some time will get it on. But nonetheless, like I said before, simply expect the unexpected. That's what we've seen so far. I mean, going into last weekend, Vanderbilt, Navy, Army, and Indiana were all ranked. Who had that on their bingo cards? I surely didn't at this point of the season. It's been one of those years in college football. That's what makes it great. I think it's going to continue to be great. And like I said, it's stretch run time now. Let's see who has what it takes to survive November and be one of those 12 teams that gets to the playoff. But folks, that's going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank each and every one of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365 that you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So, once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.